Welcome to Dead 101. This is actually texting the dead, and here's what we're going to be doing. First of all, I am not going to stand here and try to convince you of the reality of alternate planes of existence, whether those are parallel worlds or the afterlife or nirvana or whatever it might be. Doesn't make any difference. As far as I'm concerned right now, that's an irrelevant moot point. I like what Woody Allen says, which is that there is absolutely no question whatever at this point about whether there is an afterlife. The only real question is how far is it from Midtown. And I'd like you to keep that in mind as we work with this. So right now I'm going to simply demonstrate to you a couple of ways that we can. First of all, we want to do several things. First of all, we want to establish communication. Well, in order to do that, you first have to establish that you are in communication. Before you can start communicating, you've got to actually establish, do you hear me? Do I hear you? So there is that. So that's called contact. So number one is contact. Number two is identify. Who are you? Who am I talking to? You claim to be my Uncle Fred, my long dead Uncle Fred, but how do I know it's really you? So Uncle Fred says, do you remember the time when such and such? Oh, yes. Well, that might be Uncle Fred, it might not. I mean, there's no way of proving it from that, believe me. But you can, through a series of very clear questionings, establish the identity of the individual, the entity with whom you're in contact. So that is an area I'm going to discuss totally aside from all this other stuff. The other thing is, when you establish contact, after contact comes, of course, identification. After identification comes communication. After communication comes a breaking away of the contact, which is what we call the discharge. Now, there are other terms for it, but that's one of them. Now, so the main idea here is what you want to do is you want to establish contact. First of all, how do you know you've established contact? Well, see, years ago, before the invention of all these wonderful things, or before I knew about them, because these things, some of them did exist way before I was doing this, but when I was in Los Angeles, I would walk into a house and I'd say, this house is haunted. Now, there was no way that I could prove it at that moment, as far as I knew. So, here I have a way of demonstrating, do I or do I not have contact? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have three different kinds of contact. Three totally different kinds of contact. All right, which kinds? I'm going to have the kinds that are the most foolproof. Absolutely the most foolproof. The ones that I'd be most likely to trust in terms of their reality and and what they say to me. Now, you know, just because I can tell you something like what the serial number of a dollar bill in your wallet, I might be able to rattle that off. That doesn't mean that it is actually clairvoyance or some sort of perceptual thing. Could easily be that I'm telepathic and I'm just reading off. When you read the number, I actually have that number in my head too. That's very possible. So you can't eliminate all those things, but you're going to try to eliminate as many of the uncertainties as possible. Well, here is, first of all, the first question is, do we have contact? Do we have contact? So that's the first question to answer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish contact right now with a friend of mine who is a spirit guide. And So I'm going to call him, and we're going to see if we can get him to respond to me. So I want to see if I can get in communication with Martin Silverwolf. Martin Silverwolf, will you communicate with me, please, by ringing the bell? Can you do it, buddy? Oh, it did ring. Try it again. Martin, try it again. You had it going there for a minute. Hang on. Let me turn it this way for you. See if they'll make it any easier for you to do it. Hang on, hang on, hang on. Okay, give it a try, Martin. Make it work. Can you ring the bell? All right, excellent. Okay. But it's kind of a weak ring. You notice? It's a weak ring. So I want to have a second test so I can check it, because I'm not really sure that, I mean, yes, it rang, but maybe it was a puff of wind, maybe it wasn't. We don't know for sure. Simplest way to tell whether we're getting a real read, a true, what's called a true read or not, is simply to take another test.